Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to this special edition of the Powercat Postgame Podcast. We were all occupied last night, either covering the game, watching the game, or dressing up as Fred Flintstone. Oh, right, that way. Weatherman, that one wrong. Fitz and Cole and Brien, Big Hanley and Monte Spiller are two football analysts to join us. And how tired am I? I'm turning over the hosting duties to Cole Carmody. Cole,
thank you.
You're in charge.
Thank you, Fitz. You know, anytime you hear, let's head to the studio and here's Fitz, you know, you always expect big things. So I have some pretty big shoes to follow in. But boys, K-State takes care of KU 29-27. They move to 7-1 overall, 4-1 in conference. Drops the Jayhawks to 2-6 and 1-4 in conference. And I don't know about you all, but I walked away from that game last night thinking that was one of the more emotional games that K-State's played in a really long time. It was one of the more entertaining games if you just take a step back and you're a fan of college football. So, Monty, I'm gonna let you go first. What were your initial thoughts on the game?
Well, you know me, a win is a win. After I got home and had a chance to really think about it, I kind of got pissed off a little bit. We're a better team than that. Don't get me wrong. You know, we found a way to win, but going back and just playing quarter by quarter and situational ball, it shouldn't have been that close. Hats off to KU. They outcoached us and both sides of the ball, in my opinion. They schemed as well. They threw everything out there, but I'm glad we got the win, but a lot to be had moving forward, a lot of questions to be answered and to talk about.
You know, I'm going to go the other way with it. It wins definitely a win. I just think KU's better than what everybody's saying that they were. KU's just found ways to lose games. There's a key stat that's out there right now, and I don't know if a lot of people know. KU's 2-6, but they've outscored their opponents by 46 points this year. You think about that for a second. 2-6, but you're outscoring your opponents by 46 points over 8 games. To me, it tells me you got a talented roster. You're just finding a way to lose a football game, which they found a way to lose a football game last night. Yep. K-State wasn't at its best. But I'm going to say it's because KU is good. They're a good football team. They have good football players. They have good coaching. They found a way to lose, and K-State capitalized on it, which is what you're supposed to do. That was not K-State's best effort by any means. No. But I think there was some things, first of all, and we'll get into all of it on why, but it definitely wasn't their best. It wasn't their best football game. I think KU had a lot to do with that. But you won. And I would rather, and you guys know me, and Amani, I know you're the same way. We could play lousy every single week as long as we score one more point than the opponent. That's all I care about. We can play horrible. You know, they were a horrible national champion, but we're national champions, so I'll take it.
Man, that was a wild one. For the second or third year in a row, KU probably should have won. Yep. But this is what happens when a series gains life. Like Kansas State had to fight up that hill against Nebraska until it finally got over the hump. It becomes as much a mental barrier as a physical one, and I think we saw that again. The pressure cooker KU kind of finds itself in leads to mistakes, and quite often those manifest themselves on special teams. And I don't know, for the third year in a row, special teams play has played a significant role in the momentum. It was a muff punt 2 years ago. It was the blocked extra point that was returned. It seems like something else happened in special teams last year. And of course, the catching the ball and stepping out at the one fiasco that led to the safety that ended up being the margin of victory. It seems like KU is in its own way, and that's just what happens when you find yourself in a situation where you find yourself looking at the size of the mountain instead of just climbing the damn thing. You get intimidated before you step on the field. KU was really good. Jalen Daniels was really good until the end. He's always good until he has to push a little bit, and then he makes some risky plays. But somehow it's still going at 16 years. It doesn't matter if it was 2 points or 25 points. K-State got the win. Everything they want to accomplish this season is still on the table.
What to me, you talk about that special teams play, Fitz, and I kind of compare it to baseball. When you go up to the plate saying, I got to get a hit, I have to get a hit. You try so hard, and how many times you get a hit? None. You never get that hit because you're pressing so hard. It feels like with KU, every single one of those players, and we talked about it on the Friday walkthrough, Monty and I did, but nobody has ever seen in that building KU beat K-State. And they've been so close the last few years that I'm sure the conversation in the huddle last night was, we're so close. We're so close to beating him. We're so close to beating him. Instead of focusing on what they had to do, it was, well, what do we have to do to beat them, instead of what can we do to make sure that we play our game and beat them. So I was a little, I don't want to say disappointed for KU, because you never feel like you walk out of an opponent and you never feel like, you feel bad for him. But Chris Kleiman even alluded to it after the game. Like, he felt bad that KU had to lose that game, because they really did. They played well, but Brien, I mean, when they played bad, they played bad. And you guys know what Denny Green said after that Monday Night Football game. They are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. Well, K-State didn't let them off the hook, but I think we knew who KU was, and they definitely showed their true colors.
I mean, even then, I would go the other way, because I think KU outplayed K-State. I think they outplayed them all night long. I think they controlled the line of scrimmage. And KU let us off the hook. They found a way to lose the football game, which is, again, that's when you're 2-6 and you're outscoring your opponents by 46 points, you are literally searching on how to lose. And that is what KU did again. Give all credit to K-State for not giving up, for keep fighting, even when they weren't playing well, which is what you have to do. You got to keep yourself in the game, because sometimes, Monty, these things, it can get lopsided. And I shouldn't say Monty. We all know, we wasn't watching football long enough. Things can get lopsided when you're not playing well and the other team seems to have your number and is controlling things. You look up, you're down 2 touchdowns, and then it's, okay, now we got to scramble. That never happened. K-State kept close. They had the lead for a lot of it. But it was, to me, I thought it was a fun atmosphere. I give credit to Fitz. Fitz is right. This is what a rivalry really is, man. 2 teams battling it out. Because if you didn't know that K-State had won 15 years in a row and you just tuned in for the football game, you're like, man, this is a great rivalry. And it was. It's a good football game.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Big B. And it's one of those things, too, where watching the game, and I was in my seat and my son was next to me, but we both, whenever the game gets good or gets to a point where it's like competitive, we have to walk. So I was walking the stadium, making laps and having side conversations with people. They would stop me and be like, hey, what do you think? This and that. And it's one of those situations where in my mind, I'm thinking we can pull it out. But I said, this feels different this year, because KU, like you said, they kept making plays. And whenever and let's go back to early on 3rd down. How many times did we get them on 3rd down, but we couldn't get them off the field? And that right there, too many times. And I said to my son, I said, that's not good. I said, when you get a team in 3rd and long and they consistently get first downs or find a way to break long runs, we're going to be in for a long day. And sure, they had a lot of success on that. But it was one of those things where I never gave up hope. And like you talked about it, great teams, no matter how lopsided it may get or no matter how grim it might look, find a way to win games. K-State has a history of finding a way to win games. KU, on the other hand, I feel like they were hoping more than knowing they were going to win. They were like, you know what, we got a chance, but there's still some doubt. And that doubt crept in, and they allowed the K-State to get back into the game. And you ultimately see what happens when you allow a good team or a great team to get back in games.
Yep.
Fitz, I'm going to bring this up because this is the exact conversation we were having in the game. Our friend K-Ned says the 4th and 2 punt following Avery Johnson's fumble was a Leipold gift. I don't know if you guys recall the play, but very easily KU could have decided to go for it on 4th and 2. It felt like they had all the momentum in the world at that point. They end up punting the football back to K-State, and it kind of turns into a moot point because K-State has to punt the football right back to KU. But, I mean, that could have easily been a drive that ended with some Kansas points. And Fitz and I were sitting up there in the press box talking about it, like just absolutely stunned at, I don't want to say just that decision, but some of the other decisions that this Kansas coaching staff made. I mean, it was honestly a little perplexing.
It was. Well, that wasn't the only bad down management. K-State had a 3rd and long in which they opted to run the ball with DJ Giddens. They turned it into a 4th and 11, and they went for it.
Then went for it. Oh.
If you don't pick up enough yardage on 3rd down, you got to be willing to punt on 4th down. I didn't understand that. I look at the stats, and if you follow GoPowercat or me with daily deliveries, I'm not a big stats-driven person. Sometimes stats can be completely deceiving. For example, Kansas State out gaining BYU and losing 38-9. But K-State, this might come as a surprise to people, actually had more offensive yardage. They ran the ball more efficiently than KU, and they threw the ball with greater effect than KU. And yet the game was close. In fact, it felt like KU was controlling the line of scrimmage despite those rushing stats. Reason why was what Monty said. Through the first 3 quarters, KU was 7-9 on 3rd downs. They were converting almost every 3rd down into a 1st down. They finished the game after the final quarter 8 of 13. So after going 7-9, KU held them to 1 of 4 in the 4th quarter. And that came in a nick of time. And a big reason why was, if you watch the game, they didn't just blitz in that late 4th quarter. They brought everyone.
Everybody.
Every available body that wasn't covering a receiver and man was rushing the line. And I love Lance Leipold's quote when asked about those final possessions, what he saw from K-State. Yeah. His answer was a shitload of blitzers. And it was they were willing to sell it all out, risk everything to put some pressure on Jalen Daniels and try to get him out of the comfort zone, and it worked.
Mm-hmm. No, Fritz, you're absolutely right. And funny, I was watching another post-game show on ESPN, and they were showing highlights, and some of the commentators were like, 1 minute to go, KU has the ball, and what's going on, and they show the clips of K-State blitzing the guys, and the commentators goes, what do? Do they sit back? No, they blitz the quarterback. And they say, finally, somebody with a defensive mind gets it. You don't play prevent. You go after the quarterback in case they does. Mm-hmm. And so that paid off for him because, honestly, Daniels is a dynamic runner. We saw it last night. We've seen it all year. In the open field, he's hard to tackle. But the fact that you have 11 guys coming at you on 4th down, that was a great call. I'm not sure what the analytics were. I'm not sure what the specific call were. But you had a D lineman, a linebacker, and a safety coming after you. That's great pressure, and it ultimately sealed the game for us. So good job on Coach Klanderman for making that call in that type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You got to get these college quarterbacks off their mark. Make them understand. First of all, they got to understand where the pressure is coming from. And even if they do know, where do I go with the football? Where's the hot? Do the receivers know that there's a hot? Do the receivers know what's going? Those are all things that professional quarterbacks do really well that college quarterbacks don't. Blitz them in those situations. Speed them up, man. Monty, you're right. Fitz, you're right. And you said Jalen Daniels, when you speed him up or when he has to push, he makes mistakes. That's exactly the truth, man. And that's what you're wanting in those situations. Speed them up. Make them do something that they're not comfortable with doing. We've seen it too many times. Just sitting back, laying back. No, put pressure on them. And look, and we can be honest, K-State wasn't getting much pressure. You guys know how I hate the 3-man line. Oh, my God. He was sitting back there for years throwing the football. I'm like, what are we doing? And even when we just brought 4, we weren't getting home. We were not getting any pressure. It was like, okay, it's feast or famine, I guess. But I just thought it was a great strategy to say, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to throw the ball over our head, because I don't believe that you're going to make a check down or your receivers are going to cut their routes off. They're not going to do that. So you're going to have to throw it over our head to beat us, with us literally bringing at least 2 more guys than you can block. I love the strategy.
And part of it too, guys, I mean, when you look at the stats, Jalen Daniels, 18 of 31, 209 yards with the touchdown and a pick. I feel like most of those completions I'd have to go back in and kind of look at the yards and the specific completions, but it felt like most of those were deep balls down the field. There wasn't a lot of times where, Jalen Daniels would throw to a check down and he would get 7-8 yards. There was not very many times where he would just throw the ball to a hot route on a hitch or something like that. K-State did that multiple times. It felt like every single time KU completed a big play, it was to a deep bomb to either Luke Grimm. Obviously, they dropped a touchdown pass with Quentin Skinner. And, I've seen a lot of KU fans talking about, if he doesn't drop the touchdown, it's a different game.
But he did.
He did. And you know who else dropped a touchdown? K-State dropped the touchdown too.
That's right. Sure did.
There's lots of things that even out. But yeah, I feel like on that last drive, guys, something that people are going to overlook is very easily Jalen Daniels could have picked up that first down, but the athleticism of VJ Payne to catch him from behind, and also Toby Osunsami. If VJ Payne wasn't there, Toby Osunsami took an extraordinary angle on that play, and being a 4'6" defensive end, 4'5" maybe defensive end, one of the best athletes on the team, I mean, he was there to make the tackle too. And if he would have gotten by those two guys, there's a lot of green grass, but ultimately he didn't because of K-State's athleticism on that defense. And for as, I don't want to say bad as the defense played at times, they came up clutch on the last two drives of the game. And Monty, as a defensive guy, I know that you had to been going crazy because that was probably one of the more electric atmospheres we've seen in Bill Snyder Family Stadium in a long time.
No, I agree. Early in the game, I was questioning our tackling, questioning our schemes, questioning the effort. But then once we got in that fourth quarter when things got tight and we came up with, like you said, we came up with some big stops. But after we kicked the field goal and you guys were there, it's been a long time since I heard the Bill that loud. And when I tell you that place was rocking, it was rocking. And to see the guys, like the effort on that last play, they wanted it and they wanted to find a way. And there was nobody that was going to stop them from getting the Daniels. And it's just great to see the effort, the angle. And the funny part about it afterward, I didn't see it when it was live because I was too busy high-fiving people around me and hugging random guys that have no idea who they are.
Hanley did that last night too.
I sure did.
Mod. I think it was Mod was waving the wheat in the front. And they're
awesome more. Yep.
That was golden. I laughed. I watched that probably 4 or 5 times. But no, defensive wise, hey, they had a rough game, but they came up big when they needed to. Bend but don't break. You can use whatever you want to use. We got the win, and they found a way to walk out of there without giving it up. So it was a phenomenal play late. But I'm proud of the boys, but we have to regroup and move forward.
Agreed. Chris Tennant, man, he's been through a lot. He talks about it in post game. The fans kind of disliked him for a while based on production, and he owned it. So to get that kick, and guys, I went back and watched it. If you've ever been in a press box, it's the worst angle to watch a field goal extra point. You can't, unless you got great depth perception, you can't tell. He put that son of a gun right down the middle from 51. Was it going to be good from 56? Maybe not, but 51 it counted. And I would imagine that 95% of that stadium did not have a good feeling leading up to that leg swing. Just being honest.
Right.
So to see the young man find redemption in such a visible place as the rivalry game is pretty damn cool because he's kept grinding and he delivered. And that's big for K-State going forward. You go back to the championship game, Chris was supplanted by a kicker who then won the game in the Big 12 championship. And now he's proving that he's capable of that too. So it might be absolutely enormous for this program going forward. Because at this point, guys, look, they didn't play well. They won. Mm-hmm. And when you're trying to get to the Big 12 championship, there's no style points.
Nope.
You get a win or a loss. And last year they had one too many on the right column. And this year they're building up the left column, kind of on a collision course with Iowa State. But we know this conference, it's going to be chaotic. It's weird shit's going to happen in this conference. It just does, including last night for outsiders. It didn't surprise any of us because we knew Kansas was a good football team. I thought it was a horrible matchup for KU, but they covered up their weaknesses and found ways to be productive. So onward you go. You go to Houston that got a win yesterday, which was great for the Cougars and Willie Fritz. Utah continues to dominate the conference. It's absolutely owning the bottom of the conference. It's all theirs now, pretty much. And that's who K-State's getting. Then they get that off week, which I think will be absolutely enormous for a team that I think is mentally and physically worn down. I mean, this has been having back-to-back night road games, including a late night one in Boulder, and coming back to play a night game. They had more rest time leading up because it was a night game, but boy, it's going to be good in Houston just to play a day game.
Yeah. And Brien, is this a game that K-State loses last year? If they play this game how they played it, is this a game that they lose last year?
I mean, they played the exact same way against KU last year, and they won. So I just think, first of all, I think I know the record's not going to say it, and people may say that I'm crazy. KU is better than what they were last year. I don't care what anybody says. They are a better football team. They have just found ways to lose, and they did it again last night. I know K-State fans are going to hate me for saying this, but it's just the truth. They were the better football team last night. They just were. They played better than we did. It's okay to say that. That doesn't mean anything because we won the football game. That's all that matters at the end. But KU, they controlled the football game and had the game in their hands literally and fumbled it away. And
you're right.
We took advantage of it. That's it.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback off that, and it fits as well. This conference is so wide open. Honestly, if you look back 2 or 3 weeks, BYU should have at least one loss. Oklahoma State shouldn't have lost that game. There's 2 games Oklahoma State could have won, and they didn't. Iowa State was on the ropes against Central Florida. Central Florida probably should have won that game. How many times Baylor goes into
Tech.
Who was it?
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
Blows them out.
Annihilates them. And who would have called that? Seriously. So it's wide open. But and KU has been on that same timeline. They have played so many teams they're ahead of. They should have won, and they find a way to lose. So I get it. 2-6 record looks bad. But if you watch every game that KU has played, I would give them a chance against anybody moving forward. And they're going to beat at least 2 more teams this year. I'm calling them. They're going to beat at least 2 more teams this year.
Yeah. There's no doubt, guys. And I mean, I was thinking about this morning too. If I would have told you guys that, what are we, week 9 or getting ready to play game number 9 for K-State, that the top 5 teams in the Big 12 would be Oklahoma State, KU, UCF, Utah, and Arizona, I don't think anybody would have been like, oh yeah, like that's not crazy at all. Like I could definitely see those teams being in the top 5. Well, they're actually in the bottom 5 of the Big 12. That is your bottom 5 in the Big 12. All of those teams have 1 win or less in conference play, which just goes to show you, again, how unpredictable that this conference really is. And you guys talk about KU. The remaining schedule they have is incredibly difficult. There's no doubt about it. They got to go they go back to Kansas City and a home game against Iowa State after a bye week. And then they get BYU in Provo. They get Colorado at home. And then they have to go back out on the road to Baylor. I don't think it would shock anybody if they didn't win a single game the rest of the season. But I also don't think it would shock anybody if they found a way to win, maybe not all 4 of them, but if they found a way to win 3 of those games, I don't think anybody would be surprised. And I don't know what that would do to the conference race. Obviously, there's a lot of football left to be played, but
sure,
it would shake it up.
The teams that they play, if they win 3 of those games, it's going to change the conference race for sure.
It'll shake it up. And again, you know what? People can complain, but it's better to win ugly than to lose pretty, just like we've talked about. Yes. Guys, Ohio State, the same thing happened to them. They were 28.5-point favorites over Nebraska. We're playing horrible, absolutely horrible, and found a way to win that game yesterday. Just one example of why this sport is the best sport in the country, because college football is amazing. And Fitz, I want to ask you this question because you've seen a lot of these K-State games.
I'm old? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I'm old. You just called me old.
I'm not calling you old, but
Yeah,
I'm
you
calling you old.
Yeah.
Have you remembered a game like this one in particular in recent memory? I know the game last year was kind of similar, but this game, it just felt like it was so unpredictable. Again, we said it kind of felt like an NFL game because there was just this team could win, this team could win. You just really had no idea.
And it kind of came down to the better team, like the
Yeah.
NFL quite often does. No, because going into last night, despite the close games in recent years, the average margin of victory for Kansas State was 24.9 in that winning streak.
Yeah.
Now it comes down quite a bit, probably with that, but it's still plus 20. I mean, no, these games haven't been close, haven't been competitive. I witnessed K-State putting up 60 plus points in Lawrence in the first three quarters, and then just, kind of pulling a Brian Bosworth and lounging on the shoulder pads towards the end of the game, like he used to do in Manhattan. But yeah, it's been dominant. Lance Leipold's closed the gap. I sincerely hope he stays at Kansas. Indications are he is. If you read his wife's Twitter, maybe not. But we'll see how it all pans out. But I sincerely do appreciate that this game is more entertaining. But let's be honest, that wasn't a great, well-played football game. That was two teams finding ways to lose, and one team found one more way to lose than the other team. It really was it. K-State wasn't polished. Kansas looked good at times and yet made mistakes that were incredibly costly. It was an ugly football game, but another Big 12 single-score game goes into the books, and Kansas State has been on the right side of that 3 times this season.
Yep. I'm going to bring this up real quick because I think this is relevant to talk about. Do you think they'll use Dylan more, or do you think they're saving him for next year? Here's my whole thing about all of that is, and I'll let you guys respond. He left Colorado because he didn't think he was being used. Plus, he was homesick. He wanted to be here. I get all of that. But he wasn't being used the way that he thought. He's being used worse at K-State than what he was at Colorado. I can't imagine that he's very happy with it. I know he's glad because he's around this team, and I don't know any of this. I'm just taking this from a football player's perspective. Mm-hmm. I came here because I'm a dynamic football player to do some stuff, and for some reason, the offensive coordinator, whoever, can't figure out ways to get me the football. 5 touches last night, guys. What are we doing? And I don't care that they tried to throw it to him a couple times and they were incomplete passes. Those don't count because those weren't touches. He had 5 touches in this football game and I'm just screaming like, what has he done? You're telling me that this kid can't get more than 5 touches? And I understand that DJ Giddens is the best running back on the football team because he is. But the most dynamic football player, besides maybe Avery, is Dylan Edwards. You have to get him the football 10 to 12 times a game. Just period. You have to do that. And for some reason, Kansas State just can't do that. Monty, why? What are we doing?
You asked the question, the question is, they need to use them more? Absolutely. They need to use them more. Are they saving from next year? They might not be here next year.
Yeah. Exactly.
If they don't use them like they should. And I'm with you on that. Take advantage of the young man. If you go back in history of football, if you look at when Tavon Austin played for West Virginia, that dude did everything. They had him in Wildcat quarterback, receiver, running back, slot, whatever you name it. They found a way to get the ball in his hands. I get it. Teams are going to scheme for him. Teams are going to double him. Teams are going to bracket. Teams are going to spy him. So what? But still find a way to get him the ball, keep him happy. And yet last night's game, when they got him in the game, it was 3rd and whatever, and they had him at running back, and he got that first down. It was like everybody else was running in slow motion, and he was at his own speed. That's what we need to see. I don't know who's calling the plays. I don't know who's making the decisions. I don't know what goes into a game plan for the week offensively. But when you have a kid that's like that, you got to use them.
Guys, that power read that they ran with Avery and Dylan coming in motion across the formation and running the power read with Avery and Dylan. I love that play. It worked multiple times where Avery would give, he's reading a linebacker, a defensive lineman, whatever it is. he would read that guy and he would see what he was doing, and he would either give or he would keep and run right up the middle. It worked on a third down play that got him a first down with Avery keeping, and it also worked a few times to get Dylan around to the edge. I mean, those are the kind of plays that I think fans have been wanting to see, finding a way to get Dylan the ball in space, because if you do that, he's really hard to tackle. Not just his shiftiness, but his ability to stick his foot in the ground and go and be really fast. Like, that's a very underrated part of Dylan's game, is that he can turn on a dime. And when he gets his hips upfield, he's really hard to catch up with because he's so fast. And yeah, I really don't understand that. I mean, I was sitting up there talking to Fitz the whole game. I'm like, this would be a great opportunity to use number 3. I mean, DJ was just breaking down the defense. And there's something to be said when you're running through the middle, you bring in another back, then you can kind of pop it to the outside a little bit. I think that there's something to that. And I don't know if that's a reflection of, rotations from a position coach standpoint, if that's a lack of plays being called for, Dylan. I don't know. Obviously, we're not in the building, so it's hard to say, but I think that when they go back and they look at this game film, they're going to realize how effective Dylan was and understand, hey, you know what? Next time we're in a crunch of a game like that, we probably should get him in a little bit more.
Yeah. 3 carries, 60 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
It's 20 yards a touch.
Yep.
Big volumes.
Well, what are we doing?
Oh, no.
Feed the hot hand.
Every time he gets a big play, they take him out of the game.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Honestly, and it's funny, you guys. I was watching, and you guys may not think like I do, but if I'm a K-State offensive coach, and I'm not, and nowhere near that level, but in the NFL, football is a copycat league. If I'm them, I'm going to copy some of what KU did against us. Because if you look at some of the offensive plays that they did, they had several guys open on several plays that he had choices to throw to. And the athletes he was throwing to are nowhere near the athletes that we have. And I'm like, how are guys getting so open? But then I go back and look at it. I'm like, that's a good scheme.
Yeah, they schemed.
I feel like ours were giving Avery either 2 options. Either you throw it to what we initially call, or you check down, or not take the sack, or it's an incomplete pass. But for KU, they did a great job of giving their guys options to get open. And like you guys said before, we didn't take a lot of deep shots either. I don't know if that was by design or what, but I feel like our offense isn't as dynamic as it should be or it could be. But Dylan is definitely a game changer that needs to have more of a role in the offense.
They ran a lot of effective plays for isolating matchups.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was really impressed. I mean, Grimes has been under fire in Lawrence. He called one hell of a game. He had his team completely ready for that. And they out-schemed a K-State defense that's been pretty effective. They did a lot of stuff with Neal and Daniels that created, a great deal of confusion with option reads. I mean, K-State tries to do that, but it doesn't seem as effective. So go look at what they were doing. But I think my favorite play, and I can't even fully describe the play, was a complete misdirection play when I think it was Neal ended up with the ball going against the grain, but the fullback tight end that had been in motion stopped and came back and was his lead blocker.
Casey, 47.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he picked off, I think it was Parrish on the edge, who still made a play.
Yeah.
But they had accounted for every tackler. And quite often those plays are, you're expecting your guy to beat the one guy,
Right.
to win that one-on-one battle. They already addressed that by schematics to take that one-on-one and turn it into a 2-on-1. And it was brilliant, and it could have worked really well. And I look at that play and think, if you're going with DJ Giddens and Avery in one direction, but you end up giving it to Dylan in the other direction, and one of those tight ends is coming to lead block, steal that damn play right now.
Absolutely.
Put it in for after in the break. You can go to Houston and win this game and get ready, because Cincinnati's good, Arizona State's good, and God knows Iowa State's good. You can't lose your focus on Houston, but you better be ready for the gauntlet going down the stretch. Because if you're going to get to the Big 12 championship, you got to earn it, and you got to put more cards on the table. I don't know what's happened to the schemes with the three of them on the field together, but by God, when you start using it, it's like you bought a car with a Hemi, but you're keeping it at the speed limit. Open that sucker up and let it rumble.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
it's starting to it's getting frustrating just to watch it, because you're just like, what are we doing? It's almost like, first of all, anytime we run outside, it's like a zone read. I'm like, whatever happened to the toss sweep?
Yeah.
You know, whatever happened to that? Whatever just happened to outside zone? Anything like that? Just get outside. Now, I get it. Maybe our offensive linemen aren't as good in space, but I don't think that's the case, because DJ's best run of the day yesterday was guys pulling out in front of him. He's running outside, and that was the longest run that he had of the day. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with it. I think we got to get guys more in space. I think that's the key. We just have to be more dynamic. Heck, Avery said it. He got interviewed after the game on the field. We weren't as dynamic in the second half as we were in the first half. He's 100% correct. They weren't. It was just kind of vanilla. And I'm like, why are we going vanilla? What are we doing? Why can't we figure this out? Heck, I could draw it up in myself, put them both on the field, Monty, at the same time, DJ and Dylan. Oh, by the way, we're going to split we're going to shift and move four guys to the right, put DJ over there, and put Dylan on the backside by himself. Let's just see what the defense does. Then if they try to line up with him one-on-one, great. If you're going to press him, he's running over top of you. If you're going to sag off, run a little arrow route, a quick slant, let him catch it in space, and then go try to tackle him. It's not that difficult, man. It really isn't. And I am not an offensive coordinator, but I know enough football to understand matchups are everything, especially at the college football level, because it's usually offensive guys are more advanced than defensive guys. You can find more offensive players that can do things in space than you can defensive players. That's just the way it works. Yep. Well, use it. You've got the advantage. You got to use it.
Brien, so you're an offensive lineman. On that long play you were talking about with DJ Giddens, Carver Willis was right down there with him. So
he was.
Our friend Byron asked, any truth to the rumor that Carver Willis is joining the track team to run the 4x1? Did you ever sprint down the field with a running back and catch it right there with him?
Absolutely. Not one time. Not one time.
Nope. That wasn't his job.
Go.
You're in the back celebrating.
There's a lot of times I'm like, you know what? I don't want you to go too far, because then I got to jog all the way down there. And we got another play. And like, if you're going to go, just go score. Just go score and be done. But none of that running down 40 yards down the field. And then I got to line up again. I need some oxygen.
Can we talk an explanation, though? Carver Willis was booking.
He
was.
Here's your tackle, and he's running past your running back going downfield. It's not like DJ was, doing this stuff. DJ was running. And here comes Carver Willis, like Forrest Gump, just running right by him. Incredible. Amazing.
Let's talk about the quarterback play, guys, because Andrew brings up a point here. I don't necessarily know if I agree with this. He says, I know this isn't popular, but Avery isn't seeing the field well. He didn't see guys open, didn't see the rush come in a couple of times, ran into a sack. BYU, Colorado, KU, it's like a roller coaster, great then bad. I don't necessarily think that Avery had a bad game. I actually think that he played pretty well. And I think when you go back and you look at this game, you really digest and think about and watch the plays that happened. I think Avery actually might have won this game on the very last play, very last offensive play of the game, getting that ball out when he did. Because if he takes a sack right there, K-State has to go for it. They're knocked out of field goal range. He gets rid of that ball just right in the nick of time. I don't think Avery played bad. It definitely wasn't his best game, but I mean, guys, he still had 14 carries for 67 yards, scored a touchdown, and threw for 250 yards with two touchdowns, no interceptions. He had the fumble, but K-State still won the turnover battle. So I don't think Avery played bad. I don't think it was his best game, but I just think that kind of shows how good he's been. And so now fans are kind of wanting more, which is pretty natural.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can watch quarterbacks and say, oh, he missed that receiver. Do you know how chaotic it is within the heart of a play? You're not up above seeing who's open. You got all these big guys wearing different colored uniforms in front of you, and you're trying to find angles between the players to see. It's not easy. And plus, you got people coming at you, including one of the sacks being a complete untouched blindside. Yeah, nobody was even there to yell, "Watch out!" I mean, there's no way you can see it. The chaos of a play is kind of like the fog of war, and you just got to figure out how to make the play within the chaos that is in front of you. So you don't see everyone, and he's also a young quarterback, so he's still learning, and he's learning at an exponential rate. But Lance Leipold and that defense threw some stuff at him that he's going to learn from. So I'm encouraged by it, because you look at how Avery played in games with less pressure earlier in the year, and we weren't talking about him throwing for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also ran the ball 14 times for 67 yards, which is a very effective stat for a quarterback. So I'm not going to put too much on Avery. I think what Avery and Dylan and DJ, to a lesser extent, because he's a junior, Austin Romaine, Jace Brown, have shown that this series ain't turning to KU's favor anytime soon. Okay. No. K-State's the one with the young upcoming talent now that KU just cycled through. They just cycled through all those players that might have been around or were early Leipold recruits. And now it's kind of going to start over again in Lawrence next year with a junior quarterback, a junior running back, a junior linebacker, a junior receiver. There's just a lot of young talent on K-State that's going to remember that how hard it is to win and to be better prepared.
Yeah. Going back to Avery real quick, a lot of people they look at their feelings over facts. Avery is young, and a lot of people expect a lot from him because he is so dynamic. He is one of the highest recruits to come to K-State, and he's one of those guys where you're the face of the program. People expect you to be dynamic with your legs and your arm, but when you don't do that, and their feelings were high because it was KU, and they expected him to dominate the game. You know, we expected him to do well, and you made a good point about him saving the game to a certain extent by getting rid of the ball and not taking a sack, because a lot of people don't look at that and go from there. But Avery's going to be okay. He is young. He's a true sophomore. But I keep looking back, and I never would have thought a KU game would be beneficial to us. But if you look at the KU game, the CU game, the Tulane game, all those games, we were challenged as a team, and we had to overcome adversity. And the fact that these guys, as young players, are finding ways to win, not pretty, but finding ways to win, is setting them up for when we do get to an Iowa State or a Big 12 championship. When the adversity does come, they're not going to panic. You know, you get some teams who have an easy go, let's say, and then once it gets later in the season and they get challenged, are they going to rise to the occasion or are they going to fold? And I think K-State has been through enough wars right now, and they will continue to get better, where when the time get rough late in the season, when it counts, they're going to be okay. So I look at it as a blessing that the game was as tight as it was, and they didn't lose their rival game, and they got their win, and they are still in the hunt for the Big 12 championship. So I look at that way as growing pains, but we're going to be okay, man. We're going to be okay.
One of my concerns coming out of the game is I just watched the last play, the highlight of the fumble, and Austin Moore waving the wheat. I think the machine malfunctioned. I think he had a glitch. He was actually celebrating. He left his machine persona to wave the wheat, which is ironic because he grew up a KU fan, so he knows damn well how to wave the wheat. And now he's on the other side of a rivalry. Guys, this was Coach Kleiman said it after the Tulane game. This was a culture win. This was a team that just refused to lose that game. They found a way to force the fumble to get the field goal just enough to get over the hump. And we keep coming back this. You know what happened yesterday? K-State won a football game. We're going to talk about it, break it down, bitch about things. And at the end of the day, they literally survive and advance.
Yep.
And now they go to Houston. They get a week off. 3 really challenging games, but this team now can see the road very clearly what they need to do. Meanwhile, there's a little chaos out there with some other teams having to go through some challenges. Right now, there's 4 clearly better teams than everyone else in this conference. I say clearly after K-State win by 2, but it's the accumulation of what you've done over the season. And those 4 schools are going to fill the 2 spots in the Big 12 championship, I think. I don't think anyone else is going to get involved with it. I don't think anyone has the manpower to overcome what they have to, because honestly, I think Iowa State will probably be unbeaten by the time K-State goes there, and that will clearly put them in the championship game with a win, maybe with a loss, depending on what K-State does. BYU, I don't see them losing. I thought UCF was it, so I don't know how anyone's going to catch anyone if they've got more than 1 loss in the conference, and that's the reality for almost every school except those 4.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think they have separated themselves. Look, people were talking about Tech. I mean, we go through that on the Big 12 Insiders Fence. Tech fans just jumping in the comments, screaming about all the respect that they deserve. And first you get smacked around by Baylor at home, give up 59 points. And then this week you got the game in hand, and then you literally throw up all over yourself and let TCU come back and beat you. I'm like, I get that this conference is chaotic, but some of the teams that everybody was preaching about at the top of the conference, they just weren't there, and it's proven out to be so. And the season's not over. That's the thing. Some of these teams are going to end up losing more football. Tech's going to lose minimum 2 more games. I mean, there's some of these teams that just aren't as good. The 4 at the top are. Colorado's in that conversation. Whether people want to believe that or not, they're in that conversation. They're a good football team. K-State is a really good football team. So everybody's got their deficiencies, though. The one team that we thought had a deficiency, I'll be honest, is BYU. BYU couldn't run the football. To save their life, they couldn't run the football. The last 2 weeks, they've run for over 500 yards. Now, granted, they had 2 running backs that got hurt before SMU. Those guys are back, but they're not even playing. It's the guy that's playing that when all those guys were hurt. But they have run for over 500 yards the last 2 weeks. And so they're a different football team now. They're better than what they were when K-State played them. Doesn't mean K-State can't beat them, but they're better. So we got to continue to get better. Just got to keep being dynamic. Monty's right. The win in a bad situation, or when we played bad, is going to help. It builds character. It just does. It always has. Sometimes sports never change. And these are one of those things that never changes. You win in spite of yourself. You build character because the coach is in that film room. The film ain't going to lie. They can go in there and light them up. This is what you did, but you're doing it after a win versus a loss.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm fired up already for the rest of the season. It's going to be an outstanding end of the year for K-State. I mean, regardless of what happens, the storylines are abundant. And you got to go to Houston. They just beat Utah, who I know somebody in the comment section says Utah is bad. I don't think Utah is a very good football team. But again, I don't think Houston is apologizing for beating a bad football team.
No, they're not.
And so they're going to be playing with lots of confidence when K-State goes down there. Now, will there be anybody down there for that game? I don't know. I know that the stands look pretty empty. But you know what, K-State fans, if you want a nice little road trip to Houston, you can stop by Frisco, Texas, say hello to Big B on your way down to Houston, and then go watch the Cats play the Cougars. I think that actually is going to be a really good game. Then they get a bye week. And then, guys, you get 2 games at home. And that is why this portion of the schedule is so favorable to K-State, because after the game on Saturday, realistically, you don't leave for almost a month. You get to sleep in your own bed for however many days in a row that is before you have to go finish the season at Iowa State. That is a huge advantage, and I don't think it should be overlooked. But, guys, as we kind of wrap up the show and finish with our closing thoughts, I'll say this. I think that the win over KU is important for a number of reasons, but one thing we haven't mentioned yet is that there were a ton of recruits on campus. And I would be remiss if we didn't mention that, because that is a major win in front of a lot of kids, especially a lot of kids who are from the state of Kansas who are comparing and contrasting these two programs. And the atmosphere combined with the type of win, combined with the guys who were the heroes, Chris Tennant, Mill Valley, Avery Johnson, Mays, Kansas, Austin Moore, Lewisburg, Kansas. Like all of these guys who are from the state of Kansas were the ones who were responsible for getting the win. That is going to go a long ways. But man, I mean, it was an electric environment, and K-State, as we've said, found a way to win.
Let me pop this up real quick. Interesting about the schedule. There's now 4 schools, as K-Ned points out here, that are clearly better. Kansas State played at BYU, played at Colorado, and will play at Iowa State. They play all 3 on the road and now are 1-1. They want to go to Arlington. They have to get to 2-1 in that grouping. But those 3 only play KSU. They don't cross-pollinate other ways. It's crazy how at the end of the day, K-State ended up with a really tough schedule when people thought it was soft.
Yep.
Everything we thought we knew at the start of the season is almost gone, with the exception that K-State and Iowa State are up towards the top. And Oklahoma State, Utah, Arizona, who am I forgetting? Kansas. It's absolutely incredible. That was going to be half of the upper half of the conference, and now it's almost the bottom 4.
Right. I'll leave you guys with this, and Fitz, you're spot on, and we talked about it earlier, and alluding back to Kansas. Watching them play, they're going to give Iowa State fits. Not saying they're going to beat them, but I think they're giving fits. Iowa State have a good fan base because the game's in Arrowhead, and people from Ames travel really well when it's a KC game, and especially basketball and football. But let's talk about the Sunflower Showdown. 16 straight. And I heard a lot of young people, and I said like Coach Snyder, a lot of young people last night singing happy birthday because it was Sweet 16. I liked it a lot. But let's not forget that we do still own this state, and the 16 was really sweet last night. It gave me a little bit of stress, but it was definitely sweet. So that's what I'm going to end on.
I think K-State's in a good spot. You go handle your business this week. You'll have to go play at Houston. Yep. Houston's not going to lay down. So you go win, then you get a bye week, and you get tuned up for the last 3 games. They'll be tough games, all 3 of them. All 3 of those teams are good football teams. But K-State's also a good football team. I know a lot of times when we talk about, we're playing against a real good team, and we are. But remember, we are also one of those good teams, and we can't forget that aspect of it. So I'm looking forward to the final 4 games of the season. It's coming down to this. Would we have it any other way? And I'll throw this out there, and people, maybe you're mad, maybe you're not. Last night, did it look like college football was ruined? I don't think it was. I don't think it was. There's a couple million people watching on TV, and that stadium was packed and loud. So I don't think college football has been ruined by any of this stuff.
Nope.
So I love it. Good win, though. Good win.
No doubt about it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Fitz, I'm going to let you push the buttons because I don't know where to go. I'll throw it to you. I'm the host. You're the producer, so you get to do the sign-off. I think that's how that works. But nonetheless, guys, thanks for joining today. I'm like I said, do this more often. This is a good time, boys.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.